Greetings, literary lovers. Welcome back to Booktopia Lessons. In today's video, I'll delve into the historical background of the poem Big Match 1983 by Yasmine Goonerathne. So far, I have covered 19 poems, and this one is going to be the last poem I'll be covering in the poetry section. Now, I know this poem can be a bit of a head scratcher for many students. You may find the poem difficult because of two reasons. Either you lack the awareness of the historical events related to the poem, or you find the language employed by the writer a bit complex. So here's the plan. I'll be doing two videos covering the poem. First one is for the historical background, and the second one for an in-depth analysis of the poem. So before we delve into the history, let's learn few things about the writer Yasmine Goonerathne. Yasmine Goonerathne was born into a very prestigious family in Sri Lanka in 1935, and she was the niece of S.W.R.D. Bandaranaike. She was a distinguished Sri Lankan poet, short story writer and essayist. Educated at the University of Ceylon and Cambridge University, she had a prestigious position at Macquarie University in Sydney. Her contributions to literature earned her numerous awards, including Australia's Order of Australia and Sri Lanka's Sahitya Ratna Award. Gooneratne's work has left a lasting impact on English and post-colonial literature, garnering recognition worldwide. She passed away in February 2024 at the age of 88. These are some of her widely read poems. Poem for Veera Sarachandra, This Language, This Woman, There Was a Country, The Post Office Queue, and The Peace Game. Her themes are varied and range from reflection on the past influence on the future, exploration of immigration and foreigners, social unrest, the place and value of the English language. If you are interested in listening to an interview of Yasmine Gooneratne, please visit this website and I'll put the link in the description box below. So Yasmine Gooneratne wrote Big Match 1983 based on a historical incident that took place in Sri Lanka in 1983, which is known as Black July 1983. So for your convenience, I'll describe the events under these subtitles. What is Black July? The duration, the areas affected by the riots, the root causes of the riots, the parties involved and who are the victims, and the government's response, and also the aftermath of the riots. What is Black July 1983? Black July refers to a series of violent anti-Tamil riots that took place in Sri Lanka in July 1983. This incident is also known as the communal riots or anti-Tamil pogrom. Remember, it's not program, it's pogrom. When and where did it take place? The incident that sparked violence against the Tamil community occurred on 23rd and the riots began on 24th and lasted till 30th July. What are the areas affected by the violence? Initially, the violence leashed by the Sinhalese mobs broke out in Borella and it spread to the other parts of Colombo. In the following days, the violent incidents were reported in other parts of the country like Negombo, Kalutara, Galle, Trincomalee and Vavuniya. By 27th July, the cities in the central province were affected by the violence. So what are the root causes behind the riots? The riot started when the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, commonly known as the LTT, killed 13 soldiers on July 23 1983. These soldiers were part of a patrol called 44 Bravo deployed in Jaffna Peninsula. The patrol consisted of 15 soldiers, and out of 15, 13 soldiers died due to the ambush. To worsen matters, the government heightened tensions by organizing a mass funeral for the soldiers on July 24th in Kanathal or Borella Cemetery. The opportunistic politicians tried to portray this incident as an attack on the Sinhalese, and it led to spark the Black July riots. Who are the parties involved and the victims of the riots? Sinhalese thugs or mobs who were fueled by anger and resentment targeted Tamil civilians, their homes and businesses during the riots. The violence included arson, looting, and physical attacks on the Tamil community. Sri Lankan government and security forces played a role in responding to the violence. However, their involvement and effectiveness in controlling the riots has been a subject of discussion and criticism even to this date. Even though the LTT was not directly involved in the riots, their actions, specifically the killing of the soldiers that triggered the violence, were a significant factor contributing to the escalation of tensions. Who are the victims? The Tamil civilians were the victims of the violence. Many suffered from attacks, lost their lives, lost their homes, and were forced to flee to safer areas. While the riots were largely targeted against the Tamil community, particularly in Colombo and other parts of the country, the Sinhalese community was also affected by the violence as it evoked feelings of distress, fear, and uncertainty about the future of the country. How did the government respond to the violence? During the Black July riots in 1983, the Sri Lankan government's response to the Sinhalese mob's attacks was complex and in some cases controversial. There were instances where the government was accused of not taking sufficient measures to prevent or stop the violence, and in some cases it was alleged that authorities were complicit or involved in supporting the attacks. This is an extract taken from an interview given by the then President Mr. Jayawardena to a London Daily Telegraph reporter. The interview was made on 11th July 1983, less than 2 weeks before the outbreak of violence. There's no doubt that Jayawardena's government's response was controversial, as this statement implies a mindset focused on appeasing the Sinhalese majority at the expense of the Tamil minority. What are the consequences or after effects of the riots? Thousands of Tamil civilians were killed during the riots and many more were displaced from their homes. The violence also resulted in a significant loss of property and livelihoods for the Tamil community. The riots also led to the creation of a large population of Tamil refugees, both internally displaced within Sri Lanka and those who sought asylum in other countries. The already existing ethnic divide between the Sinhalese majority and the Tamil minority deepened significantly. The riots are often considered a key factor for the escalation of the Sri Lankan civil war. Ironically, most people in the international community came to know the existence of a country called Sri Lanka only after the incidents of Black July. The international media like BBC, CNN, The Times, The Guardian, the Sydney Morning Herald Post reported the violence. Anita Pratap, an Indian journalist, gained significant attention for her coverage of the Black July riots in Sri Lanka based on a first-hand experience. And 20 years later, she published a book under the title The Island of Blood, covering the violence that shook the island in 1983. So we have reached the end of the video discussing the historical significance of Black July 1983. I'll meet you in the next video for an in-depth analysis of the poem Big Match 1983 by Yasmine Gooneratne. Until then, remember, the history has a voice and it's up to us to listen.